A very good day, ladies and gentlemen. I take this privilege to honor to give this lecture, and I would like to thank the organizing committee of Asian Maxillofacial Association, and especially all my good friends who have been in touch from different parts of the world for this big meeting. I've been asked to speak on morphofunctional repair of cleft palate. This is an evidence-based study which we have performed over the last 15 years in our unit. I come from Hyderabad, India, and I work for a non-profit hospital which was established in 1996. Till today, more than 30,000 documented cleft and craniofacial surgeries have been performed, and an average of 6 to 700 newborn primary patients are registered in our unit every year. Now, when you look at this cleft palate picture, it could be unilateral or a bilateral, but it has severe lot of variations and shows its heterogeneity. Even in an isolated cleft palate, it could be a different of variations with a submucous cleft palate or a cleft of soft palate. Now we need to always look into it. Are the outcomes of all these clefts are similar? Are they differ? Now, when you also look at the protocols for primary repair of cleft palate, they are based on the age and types of techniques. The age of normally operated is between 0 and 6 months, that is for lip and soft palate, or lip with hard palate using Vomer flap. Of course, it's also operated between 6 months to 2 years, where it could be done as a primary palate repair in one stage or in two stage. In one stage, where the complete palate is performed anytime between 9 to 14 months, and in two stage, the soft palate is performed quite early as early as 6 months or 12 months, and the hard palate is performed later part of the age, that is before 2 years. The normal different types of techniques that are used in repairing a cleft palate are Badak two flap technique, one Langen back technique, furloughs, Delaires, Summerlands, and morphofunctional. But how do you decide which is the best way to repair a cleft palate? Prior to that, let us just go through a quick review of what are the different techniques are. The most popular technique, which is presently now used in most of the Europe continent, is the functional Dallaire technique. It is a two-stage cleft palatoplasty where the lip and the soft palate is performed at the 6 months age. And most important, there is a horizontal incision is given posterior to the greater palatal vessel. As you see here, the incision is made posterior to the greater palatal. And the advantage is it encourages normal function of the soft palate and the tongue, facilitates closure of the hard palate, and minimizes the amount of lateral incisions and the exposure of the lateral raw surface on the lateral aspect of the hard palate. And in the closure of the hard palate, the incision is made again medial to the greater palatal foramen. Now, the only disadvantage of this technique is it is a two-stage procedure. The other most common technique that is used all over the world is the two flap technique, or called the Badak flap technique. This is a technique that is based upon the two pedicles of the greater palatine vessels. That is what you see here on the both sides. Both the flaps have an independent blood supply. After a very wide dissection of the hard palate, a good amount of muscle orientation is performed in the soft palate. And to minimize the amount of dead space between the nasal layer and the mucoperiosteal layer, a good mattress sutures are placed right from the alveolar margin down to the hard and soft palate junction. There's another very popular technique, especially in the United Kingdom. It is called as the Summerlands intervilloplasty, where he suggests that a radical muscle dissection is the key for the speech outcome in the closure. So he tries to isolate the levator valate palatinine muscle from the nasal layer and also from the mucosal layer. A very radically, it has been dissected till the tunnel or the pterygoid space, and the tensor tenotomy is performed, and the tensor is disjunction from the hamulus area, so that it closes without any tension. Even in wider palates, this hardly any tension is there because you do a tensor tenotomy. Now, there is another very good geometrical design cleft palate closure that is called as a furloughs, where two interposing opposing Zs are performed in the soft palate, and a good muscle orientation is performed. But unfortunately, this ignores the musculus uvalis formation, and it's difficult to close in the wider clefts. The different techniques in intervalloplasty are two schools of thought process, that is called the Summerland and the coat cutting. In the Summerland, as I mentioned, that the levator myoplasty is performed with a very radical dissection of the levator palatine belly, and the tensor tenotomy is performed. Whereas in the cord cutting, they do a tensor uh, transection of the tensor palatini, but its function is kept intact as the cut end is transfixed with the hook or the hammerless. The resuture of that area creates again the tautness and the tension in the tensor palatine muscle. Now, when we have so many different techniques, we need to think what is the best way to perform. So, taking in that perspective, we did a systematic review, asking ourselves a question, that is to investigate the relationship between the number of surgical procedures performed to repair the cleft palate and maxillofacial growth, speech, and the fistula formation in non-syndromic patients with unilateral cleft lip and palate. So what we did is a standard database based search from PubMed, Cochrane, Embase, Scopus, and Phenol. And we concluded that in this study, that the systematic review shows inconclusive evidence for the relative effects of one stage or two stage palate repair on maxillofacial growth, speech and fistula rates in patients with unilateral cleft lip and palate. Further, well-designed randomized control studies need to be performed, especially targeting long-term results are required. Now, what we did in the studies, we took 100 consecutive children, unilateral complete cleft lip palate, and the group A and the group B and group C are divided. And the group A one stage repair for complete palate age of 12 months is performed. And in the group B, the two stage repair of soft palate age of 12 months and hard palate age of 24 months is performed. And the group C was a control group. And we concluded in this study that there was no difference in fistula rate between the groups, although the mean nasal length of one stage group was a little higher than the two stage group, and the difference was statistically significant for speech outcomes. The difference may not be clinically relevant as the scores were still in the borderline or normal range. It was concluded that one stage palatoplasty has better outcome than two stage palatoplasty on hypernasality and fistula formation in this randomized controlled clinical trial. So with this ideology, we have proposed a different philosophy for performing the palatoplasty. We call it as morpho-functional palatoplasty. Now, the standard protocol for morpho-functional palatal repair of the cleft palate is the age is performed at the 12th month. The surgery is a single stage. The technique is a two flap with optimal muzzle dissection. We use the standard Burdock technique, but with optimal muzzle dissection. And we do a pre-surgical and post-surgical speech assessments. And if any VPI is noticed post-surgery, we wait for the good amount of speech sessions to be done. And after that, if needed, a modified furlough Z-plasty with levator myoplasty is performed, or as a pharyngeal flap is utilized to reduce the hypernasality, or a combination of both is done. Now, coming to the details of this morphofunctional palate repair, it is, as I said, it's a two flap technique with optimal muzzle dissection. We raise the standard medial and lateral incisions are performed to expose the soft palate musculature and to mobilize the hard palate flaps. The key here is we keep the tensor villi palatini intact. We do not do a radical muzzle dissection. We do not dissect the levator muscles into this tunnel into the pterygoid plate area. We just try to dissect the levator myoplasty is performed by dissecting the levator muscle from the nasal area and from the mucosal area. You can see the bunching of the levator myoplasty here, which is performed. The tensor tendon is intact. We do not radically dissect, we do not disconnect it at all. So the tensor tendon is not dissected. Dissection of only the levator muscle bundle is performed. The two flap technique with optimal muscle dissection produces a tension-free closure. The key is trying to do a lot of mattress sutures going through the nasal layer and the mucoperiosteal layer here, so that there is no dead space that is in the anterior aspect of the hard palate. And simple interrupted sutures are placed along all over the soft palate area. And most important is we do a good amount of postoperative management by applying a very tight oral pack, a pack soframycin gauze piece, which is soaked and sutured along all the alveolus area in a very tight way. So whenever the child is trying to press its tongue, the dead space is further reduced between the nasal layer and the palatal area, so that there is no dead space and the chances of wound adhesions or fistula formations are reduced. And the postoperative feeding is to give a clean, clear, filtered fluid for 1 month, and plenty of oral fluids, and a thorough parent counseling is performed. Of course, we do end up with some sequelae like formation of fistulae and velopharyngeal insufficiency. Coming to the fistula formation, how do we overcome it? As I mentioned that the primary goal is to reduce the dead space. For that thing, we need to put this post-operative palatal pack. So now the question is, does it really effective? To overcome this question, we performed a randomized control trial to effect in this to know the study how much of fistula rates are seen in our regular practice. And to overcome that, we do place an antibiotic oral pack of the hard palate at the repair of the primary repair of the palatoplasty. So the object of this study is to determine whether placement of an antibiotic oral pack on the hard palate reduces the fistula rate after primary cleft palatoplasty. Again, we took 100 patients in each group, and the technique used was Badak 2 flap with levator myoplasty, keeping tensor tendon intact. In the group A, the oral pack placed on the hard palate for 5 days post-operative showed only 2% of patients had fistula, as the group B without oral pack showed a considerable amount of fistula rate of around average of 21%. And the follow-up period was for 6 months. So the oral pack made up of sterile cotton gauze soaked in ferrometin sulfate for 5 days post-operatively does show effective reduction in the fistula rate. And in conclusion, the findings of this study provided evidence that the rate of fistula formation after primary palatoplasty is significantly reduced if a pack soaked with antibiotic cream is placed on the palate for post-operative for 5 days. Now, there are different types of classifications and difficult index that have been proposed in the literature. One of the most common and very useful ideology of classification for palatal fistulae was done by Sunil Richardson and et al. It was based on the type of the fistula that could be as a longitudinal or a transverse fistula based upon small, medium, or large, or also based on the site, that is for the hard palate anterior, middle, posterior, or it is a fistula at soft palate and uvula. And the most important thing is the closure of this thing. The factors affecting the success outcomes are is the site of fistula, size of fistula, and degree of scarring of the palatal tissue plays a major role in the outcome. Now, another most common technique that is used for closure of a recurrent fistulas or a very large transverse fistulas in anterior component of the hard palate is a tongue flap. It has its own advantages and disadvantages. And as you see here, a tongue flap is performed by taking the anterior dorsal aspect of the tongue, and the pedicle is based anteriorly. Now, there's another most commonly used flap which we use in our practice is a buccal myomucosal flap. The buccal myomucosal flap is a vascular and dependable flap. Vascular supply of the flap is consistent and profuse. The buccinator myomucosal flap is effective in eliminating the hypernasality in patients with cleft palate and veropharyngeal insufficiency. The advantages is the flap congestion is occasional and necrosis are rare. It tolerates stretching, folding, and twisting. The disadvantages are fibrosis, secondary healing, and parotid duct orifice injury. So in our practice, we hardly do any tongue flap. All our fistulas are closed with using the buccal myomucosal flaps. The other common sequelae which we normally see after primary cleft palatoplasty is a veropharyngeal insufficiency. Again, the VPI correction needs a strong thought process of algorithm. So we need to see if there is a deficiency of the palatal lengthening or the veropharyngeal narrowing procedures to be performed. So if you need to do a palatal lengthening procedure, we use a VY pushback procedure or intervilloplasty or a double opposing Z plasty. For a velopharyngeal narrow procedure, it could be a sphincter pharyngoplasty, a pharyngoplast which is based superiorly or inferior based pharyngeal flap can be used. But what we recommend for a good VPI closure is what you call as a modified Furlow Z plasty with levator myoplasty. Now the question is, why Z plasty? Several studies have supported the selection of double opposing Z plasty individuals with small gaps of 5 millimeters or less. With increasing experience with patient selection and modification of Z plasty design, however, increase of length of more than 10 millimeters have been reported. But why levator myoplasty? The physiological orientation of levator villi palatine muscle is crucial so that the velum is long enough and mobile enough. Either one alone is not enough to ensure a velopharyngeal closure. So what we did is we combined both the ideology of levator myoplasty and the Furlow Z plasty. Now, we published this outcomes in the Oral and Maxillofacial Journal calling use of modified Furlow Z-plasty as a secondary cleft palate repair procedure to reduce velopharyngeal insufficiency. Now, it is a standard insertion marking. Instead of using two opposing Zs, here we use only one single opposing Z on the palatal area. The nasal area is left intact. The goal here is to increase the length of the palatal mucosa, and this is a standard incision marking. And once the palatal mucosa is exposed, a radical levator myoplasty is performed. The muscle is identified and dissected to the tunnel, and it is very similar to what Summerland's intervilloplasty is very much. And then we repair the nasal layer in a straight line, and the double, once the muzzle approximation is done, the double opposing Zs are closed in a primarily using interrupted sutures. And this is how you can see that a severe deficiency of the VPI, you can see the length of the palate is very short. And by using this the Z Furlow Z with a myoplasty, you can see the lengthening of the palate going down into the pharyngeal area. Now results: the postoperative hypernasality reduced significantly. Postoperative hyponasality did not develop. So Furlow Z-plasty with levator myoplasty for secondary repair of VPI seems a proven technique in reduction of hypernasality during speech. So my dear friends, what I could conclude in my lecture for today is my strong recommendation is that a primary palatoplasty should be evidence-based morphofunctional palatoplasty, which is one-stage palatoplasty. Two-flap technique with optimal muzzle dissection, keeping the tensor tendon intact, is important. And the fistula prevention is most important by using an antibac soaked pack to be left in the palatal area for 5 to 10 days maximum. And if you have any velopharyngeal incompetency, a modified Furlow Z-plasty with levator myoplasty can be used for reduction of the velopharyngeal incompetency. So I would like to thank again the organizing committee for giving me an opportunity to present my evidence-based studies on palatal repair. Thank you very much.